30 seconds. That's all it took for Jake Coleman's entire world to flip upside down. 30 seconds of looking into eyes he thought he'd never see again. Eyes that belonged to the only woman he ever
Ready when
truly
you are.
loved.
Come on, sweetie.
And the same woman
go
who
inside.
was now his boss's boss. The dust from the concrete cutting hung thick in the air on the 12th floor of the new office tower rising up from Central Avenue in downtown Phoenix. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a gray smear across his skin. The afternoon sun beat through the empty window frames, turning the construction site into an oven even in late October. His work shirt clung to his back, damp with the kind of honest sweat that came from pulling wire through metal conduit for 8 hours straight. His phone buzzed in his tool belt. 5:17 p.m. He was late. Again. Jake's chest tightened with the familiar guilt as he started packing up his tools. Lily would be waiting at Roosevelt Elementary, probably sitting alone on the concrete bench outside the after-school program office, her pink backpack beside her, those big brown eyes scanning every car that pulled up. She never complained when he was late, which somehow made it worse. Some people measure success in dollars. Jake measured it in whether his daughter smiled when he picked her up from school. Tommy Chen, one of the younger electricians on the crew, called out from across the floor. "Jake, Morrison wants you in the trailer. Client's here for inspection." Jake's jaw tightened. Frank Morrison, the project superintendent, knew Jake had to pick up his daughter. The inspection could have been scheduled for any other time, but the client wanted what the client wanted, and when you worked for someone else, you showed up when called. The construction trailer sat at the edge of the site, a temporary office that smelled like coffee, sawdust, and air conditioning working overtime against the Arizona heat. Jake knocked once and pushed through the door, already forming an apology about needing to leave soon. Frank stood near the desk, a man in his early 50s with the weathered face of someone who'd spent 30 years on job sites before moving into management. Next to him stood a woman in a black suit that probably cost more than Jake's monthly rent. Her back was to the door, dark hair pulled into a neat bun at the base of her neck. Professional, polished, completely out of place in a construction trailer. Jake's boots left dusty prints on the plywood floor. "You wanted to see me, Frank?" The woman turned around. Time didn't stop, exactly. It lurched sideways, like a truck hitting black ice. Jake's hand was still on the door handle, his body frozen in the motion of entering, but his mind had already traveled back 12 years to a parking lot outside Lincoln High School, to the last time he'd seen that face. Victoria? Her eyes went wide, color draining from her face like someone had opened a tap. Her lips parted, but no sound came out for 3 full seconds. "Jake Coleman." Her voice came out rougher than he remembered, like she'd swallowed gravel. "I didn't know you worked here." Frank's gaze bounced between them, confusion creasing his forehead. "You two know each other?" Jake's throat had gone completely dry. He couldn't look away from her face, cataloging every change. The soft roundness of youth had sharpened into elegant bone structure. Her eyes carried shadows that hadn't been there before, but the shape of her mouth, the way her right eyebrow arched slightly higher than the left, the tiny scar above her lip from when she'd fallen off her bike in 10th grade, all exactly as he remembered. "We went to high school together." Jake forced the words out, his voice sounding strange even to himself. "Long time ago." Victoria's fingers tightened around the leather portfolio she held. "Yes, a long time." Frank cleared his throat. "Well then, Miss Hayward wanted to review the electrical progress personally. Jake's our lead electrician on the project, one of the best we've got." Ms. Hayward. The name hit Jake like a fist to the gut. He'd known her as Victoria Crawford in high school. Hayward was her mother's maiden name, the one her family used for business, the one associated with Hayward Development Corporation, the massive real estate firm that owned half of Scottsdale and was now building this tower that Jake had been wiring for the past 4 months. His hands started to shake, so he shoved them into his pockets. Victoria straightened her shoulders, her face sliding into a mask of professional calm so complete it felt like watching a door slam shut. "Mr. Coleman, perhaps you could walk me through the electrical systems you've installed on floors 8 through 12. The formality in her voice carved something hollow in his chest. Mr. Coleman. Like they were strangers. Like she hadn't spent 3 years as the person who knew him better than anyone else in the world. "I need to pick up my daughter from school." The words came out harder than he'd intended. "She's waiting." Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, maybe. Or pain. It vanished before he could name it. "Of course. I apologize for the timing." She turned to Frank. "Perhaps we could reschedule for tomorrow morning?" Frank nodded. "Jake's here at 6:30 most days. We could do 7 a.m.? Victoria's eyes met Jake's for just a moment. 20 years of questions hung in the air between them, unasked and unanswered. 7 works for me." Jake pulled his hand from his pocket, realized he was clenching his fist, and forced his fingers to relax. "If that's everything, Frank?" "Yeah, go on. Don't want to keep Lily waiting." Jake turned and walked out of the trailer before his legs could decide to stop working. He made it to his truck, a 2015 Ford F-150 with 180,000 miles and a dent in the passenger door from when he backed into a post last winter. The door protested as he yanked it open. His hands were still shaking when he gripped the steering wheel. Victoria Crawford. Here. In Phoenix. Victoria Hayward, CEO of the company that employed him. The drive to Roosevelt Elementary took 15 minutes through surface streets, past strip malls and housing developments that all looked the same. Jake barely registered any of it. His mind kept replaying that moment when she'd turned around, the shock in her eyes giving way to something else. What? Regret? Fear? Guilt? Lily sat exactly where he'd pictured her, on the bench outside the office, her backpack at her feet. She was reading a book, completely absorbed, one leg tucked under her. At 8 years old, she'd inherited Sarah's delicate features and Jake's dark hair, along with an intensity that sometimes made her seem older than her years. She looked up when his truck pulled into the lot. Her face split into a smile that made every hour of overtime, every aching muscle, every sacrifice worth it. Jake climbed out of the truck and met her halfway across the parking lot. She crashed into him for a hug, her arms barely reaching around his waist. "Dad, I thought you forgot me." The words stabbed, even though she said them cheerfully, without accusation. "Never, Princess. Job ran late, that's all." He kissed the top of her head and took her backpack, which weighed about as much as a small boulder. "What'd you learn today?" Lily chattered the whole drive home about her math test and how Emma Thompson had brought cupcakes for her birthday and how the library got new books and there was going to be a special reading program starting next week. "The librarian said there's a new volunteer who's going to read to us on Tuesday afternoons. Her name is Tori. She's supposed to be really good at doing character voices." Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Tori?" "Yeah. Ms. Bennett said she just started volunteering, but she already knows like 1,000,000 stories." Lily pulled her book out of her backpack. "I hope she reads fantasy. I love fantasy books." Tori. Not Victoria. A nickname, maybe. Or an alias. Jake's mind raced through the implications. Victoria had been in Phoenix long enough to set up a volunteer position at the library. She'd been here, in the same city, maybe for months, and he'd had no idea. She'd been reading to kids twice a week, including his daughter, and Millie had mentioned her a dozen times over the past few weeks. He just hadn't connected Miss Tori from the library with the girl who disappeared from his life 12 years ago. Their house was a small 2-bedroom in Mesa, 15 miles east of downtown. Jake had bought it 3 years ago, right after Sarah died, when staying in the apartment they'd shared became unbearable. The neighborhood was decent, quiet, with lawns that people actually mowed and streets where kids could ride bikes safely. Inside, the living room was cluttered with the comfortable chaos of a single dad raising a daughter. Lily's school projects covered most of the coffee table. Clean laundry sat in a basket waiting to be folded. Photos lined the walls. Lily as a baby, Lily's first day of school, Lily and Jake at the Grand Canyon last summer, and one photo of Sarah, Lily's mother, holding infant Lily in the hospital, her smile radiant despite the exhaustion. Jake had left that photo up because Lily needed to remember her mother's face. Some nights, he wished he could take it down, not because he didn't miss Sarah, but because the guilt of moving on felt like betraying her memory. He made dinner while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. Spaghetti with sauce from a jar, garlic bread from the freezer, bagged salad. Not fancy, but it was food, and they ate together every night, which counted for something. "Dad?" Lily looked up from her math worksheet. "Can I go to this special library reading next Tuesday? Please?" Jake's mind filled with an image of Victoria in that expensive suit, her face carefully blank, calling him Mr. Coleman like they'd never been anything to each other. But Lily loved the library. She'd been going to the Tuesday programs for the past month, coming home excited about stories and characters. How could he take that away from her just because Victoria Crawford had waltzed back into his life? "Yeah, you can go." After dinner, after Lily had her bath and brushed her teeth and put on her pajamas with the unicorns on them, Jake sat on the edge of her bed to read their nightly 3 chapters. Tonight it was a book about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Lily's eyes started to droop during chapter 2. By chapter 3, she was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Jake sat there for a moment, watching her. This was what mattered. This small person who depended on him completely, not the ghost of a relationship that had ended over a decade ago. But after he'd turned off her light and closed her door and stood in the hallway of his quiet house, his resolve crumbled. He grabbed his laptop from the kitchen counter and opened Google. Victoria Hayward brought up pages of results. Articles in the Phoenix Business Journal, a profile in Forbes about the 30 under 30 in real estate development, photos of her at charity galas, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, industry conferences. In every picture, she looked polished, powerful, untouchable. Nothing like the girl who'd sat with him in his beat-up Honda Civic after school, eating French fries and talking about everything and nothing. Nothing like the girl who'd cried on his shoulder when her grandmother died. Nothing like the girl who'd looked at him like he hung the moon. Jake clicked through to the Hayward Development Corporation website. The company history traced back 3 generations, from Victoria's great-grandfather, who'd started with a single apartment building in 1947, to her grandfather, who'd expanded into commercial properties, to her father, Richard, who'd turned it into a billion-dollar empire. And now Victoria, at 29, had taken over as CEO 2 years ago. The website included a professional photo, Victoria in a gray suit, standing in front of floor-to-ceiling windows with the Phoenix skyline behind her. Her expression was confident, controlled, revealing nothing. Jake closed the laptop harder than necessary. He hadn't thought about Victoria Crawford in years, or at least he'd gotten good at not thinking about her. He'd moved on, met Sarah, fallen in love, gotten married, had Lily, built a life that was good and real and solid. But seeing her today had ripped open something he'd thought had healed. Because 12 years ago, when Victoria had vanished without a word, she'd taken a piece of him with her. The piece that believed in forever. The piece that trusted completely. Sarah had loved what was left. She'd been patient with his walls, gentle with his broken edges. She'd given him Lily and 3 years of happiness before a drunk driver had blown through a red light and stolen her away. Jake sat in the quiet of his living room, surrounded by the life he'd built from the wreckage of 2 losses, and felt the past reaching up to drag him back down. His phone alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., like it did every weekday. Jake had been awake for an hour already, staring at the ceiling and trying not to think about what he was going to say to Victoria when he saw her in 90 minutes. He made coffee, strong and black, made Lily's lunch, peanut butter and jelly, because that's what she'd eat. Woke her up at 6:15 with enough time for breakfast and getting dressed, but not enough time for her to dawdle. By 6:45, they were in the truck, heading towards school. "You're quiet today, Dad." Lily had her book open, but was watching him instead of reading. "Just tired, Princess." "You're always tired." She said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. "You work too hard." 8 years old, and already sounding like a mother. Jake's chest tightened. "Somebody's got to pay for all those books you keep reading." Lily grinned and went back to her story. Jake dropped her off at 7:15, waited until she disappeared through the school doors, then drove back to the construction site with his stomach in knots. Victoria's Lexus was already in the lot when he arrived, a 2023 GX 550 in silver, probably cost $70,000. Jake parked his battered F-153 spaces away and tried not to feel the sting of comparison. Frank was waiting outside the trailer with 2 cups of coffee from Dutch Brothers. "Figured you could use this." He handed one to Jake. "Ms. Hayward's inside looking at the plans." Jake took the coffee, grateful. "Thanks." "Listen," Frank's voice dropped. "I don't know what history you two have, and it's none of my business. But she specifically requested you for this walkthrough. Said she wanted the lead electrician's perspective. So whatever happened back in high school, keep it professional today, yeah?" "Always do." Frank clapped him on the shoulder. "Good man." Victoria stood at the desk when Jake entered, her attention on the electrical schematics spread across the surface. She traded yesterday's black suit for navy blue, her hair pulled back in the same severe bun. When she looked up, her expression was carefully neutral. "Mr. Coleman, thank you for making time this morning." The formality felt like a slap. Jake set his coffee down harder than he'd intended. "Let's get one thing straight. You can call me Jake. We've known each other too long for the Mr. Coleman nonsense." Something flashed in her eyes. Relief, maybe, or gratitude. "All right." Her voice softened a fraction. "Jake." His name in her mouth after 12 years of silence made his pulse kick up. "What do you need to see?" She turned back to the schematics. "The power distribution on the upper floors. I want to understand the load calculations and why we went with this particular panel configuration." For the next 40 minutes, they talked electrical systems. Victoria asked smart questions, the kind that showed she actually understood construction, not just the business side. She challenged some of his choices, not aggressively, but with genuine curiosity about the engineering decisions behind them. Jake found himself relaxing despite his intentions. This was familiar ground. He could talk about amperage and circuit breakers and conduit runs without his emotions getting tangled up in it. They moved up to the 12th floor so he could show her the actual installation. The morning sun streamed through the empty window frames, painting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. Victoria stepped carefully in her heels, watching where she placed each foot. Jake pointed out the main distribution panel, the junction boxes, the neat runs of conduit. Victoria leaned in to examine a particularly complex intersection of cables, close enough that he caught her scent. Something floral and expensive that had no business on a construction site. Why did you use EMT conduit instead of PVC here? Building code requires metal for commercial high-rises. PVC's cheaper but doesn't meet fire safety standards. She pulled out her phone and made a note. I'm trying to learn every aspect of the projects we develop. I don't want to be the kind of CEO who just signs checks without understanding what they're paying for. You always did want to understand how things worked. The words slipped out before Jake could stop them. Too personal, too much acknowledgement of their shared past. Victoria straightened, her phone still in her hand. Her eyes met his and held. Jake, I know we need to talk. About why I left. About everything. His jaw tightened. 12 years of buried anger sparked to life. You think? One day we're making plans for after graduation, talking about getting an apartment together while I went to Mesa Community College and you went to ASU. And then you just vanished. Your parents said you went to stay with family. They wouldn't tell me where, wouldn't give me a number. I know. I looked for you, for 3 months. I drove to Tucson, Flagstaff, even up to Sedona, asking anyone named Crawford if they knew you. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. I heard. My parents told me. The words hit like a physical blow. You knew I was looking for you? And you never called? I wanted to. The tears spilled over now, tracking mascara down her cheeks. You have no idea how much I wanted to call. But I thought it would be better if I stayed away. Better for who? Before she could answer, Tommy's voice echoed up from the stairwell. Jake! We got a problem with the panel on 6. Jake wanted to ignore it, wanted to make Victoria finish this conversation. But responsibility pulled harder than old anger. We're not done talking about this. He turned toward the stairs, then stopped. And Victoria, if you're going to keep volunteering at Lily's library, she deserves to know who you really are. He left her standing there among the conduit and cables, her expensive suit and careful composure finally cracked. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work. The problem on the 6th floor turned out to be a mislabeled circuit that took an hour to trace and fix. By the time Jake looked up again, it was past 3, and he needed to leave to pick up Lily. Victoria's Lexus was gone from the lot. Jake drove to Roosevelt Elementary with his mind churning. He'd been too harsh. He'd been too soft. He should have walked away entirely. He should have demanded answers. Lily bounced out to the truck with her usual energy, chattering about her day. Jake let her voice wash over him, grounding him in the present, in what mattered. At home, while Lily did homework and Jake started dinner, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Victoria. Frank gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I owe you an explanation. Can we talk? Not at work. Somewhere private. Jake stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. How private? My place? I live in Paradise Valley. Or somewhere you'd be more comfortable. Your choice. Paradise Valley. Of course she did. That's where Phoenix's wealthiest families lived, in estates hidden behind walls and gates. Jake's thumb hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed at him to decline, to keep the past buried, to protect himself and Lily from whatever chaos Victoria's reappearance might bring. But he'd spent 12 years wondering, 12 years with a hole in his understanding of his own history. Not your place. Somewhere public. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. I'll find a spot and send you the address. Thank you, Jake. He didn't respond to that. After Lily was asleep, Jake sat on his back porch with a beer he didn't really want, staring up at the Arizona sky. The stars were visible out here, away from downtown's light pollution. Sarah used to sit out here with him on warm nights, her head on his shoulder, talking about Lily's future, about the life they were building together. I don't know what to do, he said to the empty air, to Sarah's memory, to whoever might be listening. She's back, and I'm angry, and I'm confused, and I don't know what to do. The stars didn't answer, but saying it out loud helped somehow. Tuesday arrived with the inevitability of a train wreck. Jake sent Lily to the library reading program because backing out now would require explanations he wasn't ready to give. He spent the afternoon installing outlets on the 8th floor and trying not to check the time every 5 minutes. At 6:30, he pulled up to Burton Bar Central Library in downtown Phoenix. The modern building rose 5 stories, all glass and concrete. Inside, the children's section hummed with activity. Jake told himself he was just picking up his daughter. He told himself he wasn't here to spy on Victoria. He was absolutely here to spy on Victoria. He found the reading room on the 2nd floor. Through the glass wall, he could see maybe 10 kids sitting on colorful floor cushions arranged in a semicircle. And in the center, cross-legged on the floor, in jeans and a simple gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, sat Victoria. She looked nothing like the CEO in the sharp suit. She looked young, relaxed, genuinely happy. She held a picture book in her hands, and even from outside the room, Jake could see her expression transforming as she read, becoming each character in turn. The kids were completely absorbed. One boy leaned forward with his mouth open. A little girl clutched a stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide. And Lily's face glowed with pure joy. Jake's throat tightened. Victoria made a dramatic gesture, clearly reaching a climactic moment in the story. The kids gasped in unison. Then she must have said something funny because they all dissolved into giggles. She caught sight of Jake through the glass. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Acknowledgement, recognition, pain. But she didn't break character. She finished the story, her voice carrying through even though Jake couldn't make out the words. When she closed the book, the kids erupted in applause. The session ended, and children scattered toward their waiting parents. Lily spotted Jake and ran over, her face flushed with excitement.
Dad, did you see? Miss Tori is amazing. She did all the voices and everything.
Victoria approached them slowly, her expression uncertain. She'd pulled her hair back into a simple ponytail, and without makeup, Jake could see faint shadows under her eyes. Hi, Lily. Her voice was warmer than it had been on the construction site, more like the girl Jake remembered.
Dad, you know Miss Tori?
Lily's eyes went wide.
That's so cool. How?
Jake and Victoria spoke at the same time. We went to high school together. We're old friends. Lily looked between them, clearly sensing something, but too young to name it.
Can Miss Tori come to dinner? Please? I never get to have friends over, and Miss Tori is the best reader in the whole world, and she knows like every story ever written.
Lily, I'm sure Miss Tori has plans. Actually, Victoria's eyes locked on his. I don't have any plans tonight. Jake wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the boundaries, keep his world separate, but Lily was looking up at him with those big brown eyes, and he'd already failed her in so many small ways by being a single parent stretched too thin. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do isn't fighting. It's letting his guard down long enough to see if trust is still possible. It's just spaghetti from a jar.
That sounds perfect.
In the parking lot, Lily ran ahead to Jake's truck, already chattering about which book she wanted to show Victoria. Jake stopped beside Victoria's Lexus. Why are you doing this? The volunteer work, the kids, all of it. She pulled her keys from her purse, but didn't unlock the car. Because for 2 hours every Tuesday, I get to be Tori. Not Victoria Hayward, CEO. Not my father's daughter. Not the person everyone expects me to be. Just someone who loves stories and likes kids. You could have gone anywhere. Volunteered anywhere. Why my daughter's library? I didn't know she was your daughter. Not at first. Victoria's voice dropped. I moved back to Phoenix 6 months ago when I took over the company. I started volunteering because I needed something real in my life, something that mattered beyond quarterly earnings and development deals. And then one Tuesday, this beautiful little girl with your eyes and your intensity walked in, and the librarian called her Lily Martinez, and I thought, Coleman. Her name is Lily Coleman. She's never used Sarah's last name. Victoria blinked. Sarah? My wife. Lily's mother. The past tense stuck in his throat like always. She died 3 years ago. Car accident. The color drained from Victoria's face. Jake, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Follow us. It's about 15 miles to Mesa. The drive gave Jake time to second-guess every decision that had led to this moment. Inviting his ex-girlfriend, the one who'd ghosted him 12 years ago, the one who was now a billionaire CEO, to his modest house for boxed pasta dinner with his 8-year-old daughter. This was fine. Everything was fine. Lily kept up a steady stream of conversation from the passenger seat about Miss Tori and the stories and how she did different voices for every character, and wasn't it amazing that Dad knew her, and Small World, and maybe Miss Tori could come every week, and... Slow down, princess. Let's just see how tonight goes. Victoria's Lexus stayed 3 car lengths behind them the whole drive, a silver shadow in his rearview mirror. Jake's house looked even smaller with Victoria standing in the driveway. She took in the cracked sidewalk, the lawn that needed mowing, the basketball hoop over the garage with a torn net. It's not much, Jake said, unlocking the front door. It's a home. Victoria's voice carried something that sounded like longing. That's more than much. Lily gave Victoria the full tour, dragging her from room to room with the enthusiasm of a realtor on commission. She showed off her book collection, her art projects, the photo wall in the living room. Victoria lingered on a picture of Lily and Jake camping at the Grand Canyon. You went backpacking? Just an overnight at the South Rim, nothing fancy. Lily pointed to another photo. And this is when I lost my first tooth. Dad gave me $5 whole. Victoria smiled, but Jake saw her eyes drift to the photo of Sarah. He'd taken it at the hospital right after Lily was born. Sarah looked exhausted and radiant and so alive. Your mom was beautiful, Victoria said to Lily. Yeah, she's in heaven now, with the angels. Lily said it simply, the way kids did, stating facts without fully grasping the weight. But I have Dad, and Dad's the best. Jake's throat closed up. In the kitchen, Victoria offered to help. Jake handed her a knife and cutting board with vegetables for salad, then immediately regretted it when she held the knife like she'd never seen one before. You don't cook much, do you? I have a chef. She said it without embarrassment, just stating a fact. His name is Martin. He's wonderful, but I have no idea what he actually does. Jake stepped behind her, close enough to smell her shampoo, and wrapped his hand around hers. Like this. Curl your fingers under so you don't cut them off. Victoria went very still. Her pulse jumped visibly in her neck. Got it? She nodded, not looking at him. They worked in silence for a few minutes, Jake at the stove, Victoria carefully cutting tomatoes into uneven chunks. Lily sat at the table coloring and narrating a story about a princess who built her own castle. It felt surreal. Victoria Crawford, in his kitchen, wearing designer jeans that probably cost more than his truck payment, struggling to cut vegetables for his daughter's dinner. It also felt right, in a way that terrified him. They ate at the small table, Lily dominating the conversation. She asked Victoria about her favorite books, favorite characters, if she liked dogs or cats better, what her favorite color was, on and on until Jake had to gently tell her to let Miss Tori actually eat. Sorry, Lily said, not looking sorry at all. I just really like Miss Tori. Victoria's smile reached her eyes. I really like you too, Lily. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Victoria her bedtime routine, which apparently now required an audience. Bath time, pajamas, brushing teeth. Victoria watched it all with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. Sadness mixed with something else. Yearning, maybe. At 8:30, Jake sent Lily to bed with her book. She hugged Victoria goodnight, a quick, enthusiastic squeeze that made Victoria's eyes go suspiciously bright. Can Miss Tori come back? Please? We'll see, Princess. When Lily's door closed, Jake and Victoria stood in the hallway facing each other. The house felt too quiet suddenly. Would you like coffee? Or I have beer? Coffee's fine. They ended up on the back porch, sitting in mismatched lawn chairs with mugs of coffee that had gone lukewarm. The desert night had cooled down to pleasant, stars beginning to emerge. She's wonderful, Jake. You've done an amazing job with her. It's hard sometimes, being alone, wondering if I'm enough. She needs love and stability. You give her both. That's everything. They sat in silence for a while. Jake could hear crickets, the distant hum of traffic on the freeway. Tell me why you left. Victoria set down her mug with shaking hands. 12 years ago, 3 weeks after graduation, I found out I was pregnant. The words detonated in the quiet night like a bomb. Jake's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, hitting the concrete porch and shattering. Coffee spread in a dark pool, but he couldn't look away from Victoria's face. What? I was pregnant. 8 weeks. With your baby. His mind blanked completely, then raced, trying to make sense of the timeline, the implications, everything she wasn't saying. Why didn't you tell me? I was going to. Tears streamed down her face now, unchecked. I had the positive test in my purse. I was going to tell you that weekend. But my father found the test first. Your father? Richard Hayward doesn't accept obstacles. He saw my pregnancy as a problem to be solved. I was supposed to go to Stanford. I was supposed to take over the family business eventually. A baby at 18 with a construction worker's son? She stopped, breathing hard. Those were his words. Not mine. Never mine. Jake stood up, needing to move, needing to do something with the rage building in his chest. So what? He paid you to get rid of it? Sent you away? He threatened your family. Said he'd destroy your father's business, make sure you never got into any college, ruin you. I was 18 and terrified, and I believed him. Victoria's voice broke. He sent me to my aunt's house in California. The plan was to have the baby, give it up for adoption through a private agency, then come back and pretend nothing happened. I was supposed to start at Stanford in the fall like everything was normal. But you never came back. Because at 18 weeks I started bleeding. They rushed me to the hospital and... She couldn't finish, her breath coming in gasps. Jake sank back into the chair, all the anger draining out of him, replaced by a grief so profound it felt like drowning. "A girl," Victoria whispered. "They told me it was a girl. I named her Grace. Just in my heart. Just for me." Grace. They sat there in the dark, crying for a daughter who'd never taken a breath, for all the years they'd lost, for 18-year-old kids who'd been too scared and too controlled to fight for each other. Jake woke up on his couch at 5:15 a.m. with a stiff neck and the memory of Victoria's tears still fresh in his mind. He'd insisted she stay until she stopped crying, then walked her to her car around midnight. They'd stood in his driveway, two people who'd lost a child neither of them had known existed, trying to figure out what to say next. In the end, Victoria had simply touched his arm and whispered, "Thank you for listening." Now, in the gray pre-dawn light, Jake made coffee and tried to process the previous night. A daughter. He'd had a daughter. Grace. The name felt sacred somehow, like speaking it aloud might shatter something fragile. Lily padded into the kitchen at 6:15, her hair sticking up on one side. "Is Miss Tori coming back?" Jake poured milk into a bowl of cereal. "I don't know, Princess." "I hope she does. She's nice. And she's pretty. And she looks at you funny." His hand stilled on the milk carton. "What do you mean, funny?" "Like Mom used to look at you in the pictures. Before I was born." Lily said it casually, spooning cereal into her mouth. "Like you're special." 8 years old and already too perceptive for his comfort. At the construction site, Jake threw himself into work, running conduit, pulling wire, connecting circuits. Physical labor that required enough concentration to keep his mind from spiraling into the past, but not so much that he couldn't function on 3 hours of sleep. Tommy found him on the 10th floor around 11. "Morrison wants to see you. Conference room, not the trailer." The conference room was in the ground floor temporary offices, a converted space with folding tables and metal chairs. Frank sat at the head with 3 people Jake didn't recognize, and Victoria in a charcoal suit that made her look like she belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Their eyes met across the room. Hers asked a question he wasn't sure how to answer. Frank gestured to an empty chair. "Jake, these are the partners from Sanderson Architecture. They've got some concerns about the electrical capacity on floors 15 through 20. For the next hour, Jake presented load calculations and explained panel configurations and answered technical questions while trying not to look at Victoria. She sat perfectly still, her face professionally neutral, but he caught her watching him when she thought no one would notice. When the architects left satisfied, Frank clapped Jake on the shoulder. "Good work. You know your stuff." Victoria gathered her papers, moving with careful precision. "Jake, could I have a moment?" Frank raised his eyebrows but said nothing, leaving them alone in the conference room. Victoria waited until the door closed. "I wanted to apologize for last night, for dumping all of that on you without warning." "You didn't dump anything. You told me the truth." "Finally." Jake leaned against the table. "I spent 12 years thinking you just didn't care enough to say goodbye." "I cared too much. That was the problem." She twisted her wedding ring. Wait, she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. She twisted the expensive watch on her wrist instead. "I was 19 years old, sitting in a hospital room in Sacramento, and all I could think was that I'd failed. Failed you, failed our baby, failed everything. Coming back and facing you felt impossible. So you built $1 billion company instead. I worked 18-hour days for 10 years because if I stopped moving, I'd have to feel everything I'd lost. Her voice cracked on the last word. My therapist has a lot to say about my coping mechanisms. Jake wanted to stay angry. Anger was clean, simple, protective. But looking at Victoria's face, seeing the same grief he carried for Sarah reflected back at him, anger felt like punishing them both for being young and scared. Where do we go from here? I don't know. But Jake, I need you to understand something. When I'm with Lily, when I'm reading to those kids at the library, I'm not pretending. That's the most real part of my life. That's who I actually am underneath all of this. She gestured at her suit, her polished appearance, the invisible weight of corporate responsibility. And what about the construction site? What are you there? Trying to learn how to be better than my father. Trying to understand the work instead of just profiting from it. Victoria picked up her briefcase. I'm removing myself from day-to-day oversight of this project. David Chen, my business partner, will take over. I don't want there to be any conflict of interest between us. You're walking away from a $30 million development because we have history? I'm walking away because I don't want you to ever think my feelings are tangled up with business. I don't want you looking at me and wondering if I'm here because I care or because it's good for the bottom line. Before Jake could respond, his phone buzzed. The school. His stomach dropped. This is Jake Coleman. The nurse's voice was calm but serious. Mr. Coleman, Lily's fine, but she's in my office with a headache and mild fever. I think you should come get her. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call to find Victoria watching him with concern. Is Lily okay? Fever. I need to go. Of course. Go. Jake made it halfway to the door before turning back. Tonight. Can you come by around 6? I think we need to talk more. About everything. Victoria nodded. I'll be there. Lily dozed in the truck on the way home, her forehead warm against Jake's palm when he checked at stoplights. At home, he set her up on the couch with a blanket, children's Tylenol, and water. She fell asleep watching cartoons while Jake worked from his laptop at the kitchen table, reviewing electrical specs and answering emails. Around 2 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Jake Coleman. Mr. Coleman, this is Richard Hayward. I believe we should talk. Jake's grip tightened on the phone. About what? About the fact that you're spending time with my daughter. I'd like to meet. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. My office in downtown Scottsdale. I work for a living. Tomorrow's Wednesday. I'm aware. I've already spoken with Frank Morrison. He's approved the time off. Richard's voice carried the absolute confidence of someone who expected compliance. I'll text you the address. The call ended before Jake could refuse. He stared at his phone, anger building hot and acidic in his chest. Richard Hayward, the man who'd stolen 12 years from them, who'd let Victoria believe Jake's family would be destroyed, who'd sent a terrified 18-year-old away alone. That man wanted to have a conversation. Jake wanted to throw his phone across the room. Instead, he checked on Lily, who was still sleeping peacefully, and texted Victoria. Your father called. Wants to meet tomorrow. Why? Her response came 30 seconds later. I don't know. I didn't tell him to contact you. I'm sorry. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. If I don't, he'll just keep pushing.
Jake, be careful. My father doesn't make social calls.
When Victoria arrived at 6, she brought soup from a good deli and children's books she thought Lily might enjoy. She'd changed out of her business suit into jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Lily perked up when she saw her.
Miss Tori! I'm sick, but it's not too bad.
I heard. I brought chicken noodle soup and some new stories. They ate dinner on the couch. Lily curled between Jake and Victoria, watching an animated movie about dragons. Victoria fit into the domestic scene with surprising ease, getting up to refill water glasses, helping Lily to the bathroom when the fever made her shaky, reading stories in different character voices until Lily's eyes started to droop. Jake carried his daughter to bed, tucking her in with the gentleness that came from 3 years of single parenting. When he returned to the living room, Victoria was washing dishes at his sink. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to help. They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, then returned to the back porch with decaf coffee. The November night was cool enough to need a jacket, but not cold, the sky clear enough to see the Milky Way. Your father called me today. Victoria's coffee mug stopped halfway to her mouth. What? He wants to meet. Tomorrow morning. My boss already approved the time off, which means Richard called him first.
That son of a...
Victoria set her mug down hard. I'm going with you. No.
Jake, you don't understand what he's like. He'll try to buy you off or threaten you or...
I can handle your father.
That's what I thought 12 years ago. I was wrong.
Her eyes were fierce now, protective.
He plays chess while everyone else is playing checkers. He'll have researched everything about you. Your finances, your work history, Lily's school records. He'll find your pressure points and push.
Then he'll find out I don't scare easy. Jake met her gaze. I need to do this alone, Victoria. Man to man. If you're there, it changes the dynamic. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly.
Okay, but text me when you're done. And Jake, don't sign anything he gives you. Don't accept any money. Don't make any promises.
I'm not 18 anymore. Neither are you.
No.
But he's still Richard Hayward, and he still thinks he can control everything. After Victoria left, Jake stood in Lily's doorway, watching his daughter sleep. Her fever had broken, her breathing even and peaceful. She'd asked for Miss Tori before falling asleep, wanted to know when she'd see her again. Jake didn't have an answer for that. He barely had answers for himself. The next morning, Jake dropped a still recovering Lily at his neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez's house. The older woman had watched Lily before, knew the routine, promised to call if there were any problems. Richard Hayward's office occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Scottsdale. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of place where Jake's work boots felt like a rebellion. The receptionist directed him to the executive elevator with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The 32nd floor opened directly into a reception area larger than Jake's entire house. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views across the valley, from Camelback Mountain to the superstitions in the distance. A woman in her 40s, perfectly put together, rose from behind a desk. Mr. Coleman, Mr. Hayward is expecting you. Please follow me. Richard's office was obscene. Mahogany furniture, leather chairs, a desk that looked like it cost more than Jake's truck. The man himself stood by the windows, hands clasped behind his back, surveying his domain. He turned as Jake entered. 62 years old, silver hair, a face that might have been handsome before decades of ruthlessness hardened it.
He wore a suit that probably cost $5,000 and looked at Jake like he was calculating his net worth down to the penny. "Mr. Coleman, thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice. You made yours." Richard gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." Jake remained standing. "I'm good." A flicker of something, amusement, respect, crossed Richard's face. "Victoria told you about the pregnancy." "Yeah, she told me." "Then you understand why I made the decisions I did. My daughter was 18 years old with a full scholarship to Stanford. You were a construction worker's son with community college aspirations. A baby would have destroyed both your futures." Jake's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You mean it would have destroyed your plans? Victoria wanted that baby. I would have wanted that baby. You took that choice away from us." "I saved you both from making a catastrophic mistake." Richard moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. "You've done well for yourself, all things considered. Journeyman electrician, good safety record, respected by your supervisors. You're raising your daughter alone after a tragedy. That shows character." "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't pretend to compliment me while looking for weaknesses to exploit." Jake crossed his arms. "Why am I here?" Richard opened the folder, revealing documents Jake couldn't read from across the room. "Because Victoria is making decisions with her heart instead of her head. She's talking about selling her majority stake in the company, stepping down as CEO, starting a nonprofit focused on children's literacy. Good. She hates being CEO. Anyone who actually knows her can see that. What she hates is irrelevant. She has a responsibility to the company, to our family legacy, to the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depend on Hayward development." Richard's voice hardened. "And she's throwing it all away because guilt over a 12-year-old mistake has resurfaced. That mistake was my daughter, our daughter. That mistake was a pregnancy that would have trapped you both in mediocrity." Richard pulled a paper from the folder. "This is a check for $500,000, tax-free. All you have to do is walk away. Stop seeing Victoria. Stop letting her volunteer with your daughter. Remove yourself from her life entirely." Jake stared at the check, at the amount that represented more money than he'd earn in 10 years. Enough to pay off his house, set up a college fund for Lily, never worry about overtime again. "You think I can be bought?" "Everyone can be bought. It's just a matter of price." Jake walked to the desk, picked up the check and tore it in half, then in half again. He dropped the pieces on Richard's expensive mahogany desk. "I don't need your money. I earn my living with these hands." He held up his calloused palms. "I'm not rich, but I'm not for sale either." Richard's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Calculation, maybe, or reassessment. "My wife died last year, cancer. Before she passed, she told me I'd ruined Victoria's life, that I'd chosen pride and control over my daughter's happiness." His voice carried an edge Jake hadn't expected. "Grief, raw and bleeding. I came here today expecting to buy you off, to protect Victoria from what I assumed was another mistake. And now? Now I'm wondering if I'm about to make the same error twice." Richard sat heavily in his chair, suddenly looking his age. "Victoria talks about you the way she used to talk about teaching, before I convinced her that running the company was her destiny. She lights up. Do you understand? My daughter, who hasn't genuinely smiled in a decade, lights up when she mentions your name." Jake stayed silent, unsure where this was heading.
I can't undo what I did 12 years ago. I can't bring back Grace. Richard's voice broke on the name. But I can tell you this. If you hurt my daughter, if you're using her for access to her wealth, I will destroy you so completely, you'll wish I'd succeeded the first time. I loved Victoria when she was Elena Crawford, the girl who tutored me in English and dreamed about teaching high school literature. I loved her when neither of us had anything. Her money doesn't change that. Jake leaned forward, planting his hands on the desk. But here's what you need to understand. Victoria is going to make her own choices, not yours, not mine, hers. And if she chooses to walk away from this company, from this life, that's her right. She'd be walking away from billions of dollars. Maybe she doesn't measure success in dollars. Maybe she measures it in whether she can sleep at night without hating herself. The words hung in the air between them. Richard stared at Jake with an expression that might have been respect or might have been fury. Get out of my office, Coleman. Gladly. Jake made it to the elevator before his hands started shaking. He rode down 30 floors with his heart pounding, processing what had just happened. Richard Hayward had tried to buy him off and failed. Had admitted to guilt about Grace, had essentially given his blessing while simultaneously threatening complete destruction. The man was terrifying and pathetic in equal measure. Jake texted Victoria from the parking garage. Survived. Your father's complicated. Are you okay? Meet me at Papago Park in an hour, the main parking lot. I'll be there. Jake picked up Lily from Mrs. Rodriguez's house. Her fever was gone, energy returning, and she bounced around asking if Miss Tori was coming over again soon. Maybe. We'll see, Princess. At Papago Park, Jake found a shaded picnic table while Lily ran to the playground nearby. Victoria arrived 20 minutes later, parking her Lexus next to his truck. She wore running shoes and yoga pants, clearly having come straight from wherever she'd been. She slid onto the bench across from him, worry creasing her forehead. What happened? Jake told her everything. The check, the conversation, Richard's admission about his wife's dying words. Victoria's eyes filled with tears halfway through. He told you about Mom. You didn't mention she'd passed. I'm sorry. Last March. Ovarian cancer. By the time they caught it, there was nothing to be done. Victoria wiped her eyes. She and my father had a complicated marriage. He loved her, in his way, but he loved control more. He said she told him he'd ruined your life. She did. I was there. Victoria watched Lily on the playground, climbing the jungle gym with fearless determination. Mom spent her last months trying to undo the damage. She's the one who suggested I start volunteering. Said I needed to remember why I wanted to teach in the first place. Did you really want to sell the company before you saw me again? Victoria turned back to face him. I'd already put the plan in motion. David Chen, my business partner, was finalizing the buyout agreement. I was going to announce it at the board meeting next month. Then I walked into that construction trailer and saw you, and suddenly all my careful planning felt inadequate. Why? Because I realized I wasn't just running from a job I hated. I was running from the possibility that I'd become exactly like my father, ruthless, isolated, measuring everything in profit margins. Her voice dropped. But seeing you, seeing Lily, remembering who I used to be, that gave me courage to actually go through with it. To choose the life I want instead of the life I inherited. Lily ran over, breathless and grinning. Miss Tori, are you going to play with us? Us? Me and Emma. She's over there. Lily pointed to another girl on the swings.
Victoria glanced at Jake, who nodded. She let Lily drag her to the playground, where she gamely climbed through tunnels and went down slides and pushed kids on swings. She laughed, genuinely laughed, in a way Jake suspected Victoria Hayward, CEO, never allowed herself to do. He watched from the picnic table, his phone buzzing with work emails he ignored. Frank could handle whatever crisis had emerged. For right now, Jake needed to sit still and figure out what he actually wanted. Because Victoria was back in his life, and his daughter adored her, and his father-in-law had essentially given permission for them to try again. But trying again meant opening himself up to loss. It meant risking Lily's heart along with his own. It meant trusting that Victoria wouldn't disappear a second time. Love isn't about being perfect for each other. It's about being perfectly honest with each other. The thought settled into his chest like truth. When Lily finally wore herself out, they walked back to the parking lot. Emma's mother collected her daughter, waving cheerfully at Jake. Lily climbed into the truck, already half asleep. Victoria stood beside her Lexus, keys in hand. "Jake, I know we have a lot to figure out, but I need you to know something. I'm not the scared 18-year-old who let her father control her life. I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to leave." "I don't want you to leave, but I don't know how this works. You're selling a company worth billions. I wire buildings. You live in Paradise Valley. I live in Mesa. You have a chef named Martin. I make spaghetti from a jar. So we figure it out. Together." She stepped closer. "I don't need the mansion or the chef or the expensive car. I need something real. I need to matter to someone, not for my bank account, but for who I actually am." "And if people think I'm with you for the money?" "Let them think whatever they want. The only opinions that matter are yours, mine, and Lily's." Jake wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that they could bridge the gap between their worlds. But doubt gnawed at him, whispering reminders about how badly things had fallen apart before. "I need time to process all of this, to figure out what's fair to Lily." Disappointment flickered across Victoria's face, but she nodded. "Okay. How much time?" "I don't know. A few days? A week? I can't rush this." "Take whatever you need." Victoria unlocked her car. "But Jake, I'm not waiting 12 more years. Life's too short, and we've already lost too much." Over the next week, Jake kept his distance. He worked long hours, came home to Lily, avoided the library on Tuesday afternoon by having Mrs. Rodriguez pick up his daughter. He told himself he was being careful, protecting them both. He was actually terrified. Frank noticed the change. On Friday afternoon, they sat in the construction trailer reviewing the schedule for the following week. "You've been different this week. Distracted." Frank set down his clipboard. "This about Ms. Hayward?" "It's complicated." "It always is. You know what Nancy told me when we first started dating? She said, 'Frank, I make 3 times your salary. If that bothers you, we should stop now.' You know what I said?" "What?" "I said, 'Does it bother you that I can fix a toilet and you can't?' She laughed, and we got married 6 months later." Frank leaned back in his chair. "Point is, Jake, everyone's got something to bring to a relationship. Money's just money. Character's what counts. Her father tried to pay me $500,000 to disappear." Frank whistled low. "What'd you do?" "Tore up the check." "Good. That's what I figured you'd do. You're not the type to be bought." Frank studied him.
but you're also not the type to let pride get in the way of happiness. So what's really holding you back? Jake stared at the construction plans spread across the desk, at the neat lines and precise measurements, everything calculated and controlled. I'm scared. Of getting hurt. Of Lily getting hurt. Of building something with Victoria and having it fall apart again. You know what's scarier? Spending the rest of your life wondering, what if? Sarah wouldn't want that for you. She'd want you to be happy. The mention of Sarah made Jake's chest tighten. He hadn't thought much about what Sarah would want, too caught up in guilt about moving on. But Frank was right. Sarah had been generous, loving, the kind of person who wanted everyone around her to thrive. That evening, after Lily was in bed, Jake pulled out his laptop. He opened Facebook for the first time in months and searched for Victoria's profile. It was sparse, professional, mostly reposts of company news, but there was one personal photo from 3 weeks ago. Victoria at Burton Bar Library, surrounded by kids, holding up a copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Her smile was real, unguarded, joyful. The caption read, "Found my happy place." Jake stared at that photo for 20 minutes, at the woman who'd loved him when they were kids, who'd lost a baby and never told him, who'd built an empire to avoid feeling pain, and who'd finally found her way back to what made her happy. He texted her, "Can you come over tomorrow? We need to talk." "I'll be there. What time?" "Morning, 9 a.m., before Lily wakes up." "See you then." Jake barely slept. He rehearsed conversations in his head, trying to find the right words to explain what he needed, what he feared, what he hoped might be possible. By 8:30, he'd made coffee and cleaned the house and changed his shirt twice. Victoria arrived at 9 exactly, punctual as always. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, minimal makeup, hair in a ponytail. She looked young, nervous, hopeful. They sat at his kitchen table with coffee neither of them drank. Jake spoke first. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being honest, about figuring this out together." "Okay, I want to try, but I need us to have rules, boundaries, things we both agree to." Victoria pulled out her phone. "Should I take notes?" "If you want." "I want. This matters." Jake took a breath. "First rule. I pay for everything involving Lily and me. Dinner, activities, whatever. That's my responsibility as her father. I won't be the guy who can't provide for his own kid." Victoria typed. "Agreed. What else?" "Second, you don't use money to solve our problems. If we fight, we work it out with words, not gifts or gestures or writing checks." "Agreed." Third, we're completely honest. No more secrets. Ever. Even if the truth is hard. Especially if the truth is hard. Victoria looked up from her phone. "What else?" Fourth, we're equal partners. You might have more money, but that doesn't make you more important. We make decisions together. Yes, absolutely yes. And fifth, Lily comes first. Always. If she's uncomfortable or unhappy with us being together, we slow down or stop. Her well-being is non-negotiable. Victoria set down her phone. "Jake, those are all good rules, but I need one more." "Okay." "If this gets too hard, if the differences between our lives become too much, we talk about it. We don't just walk away. We fight for this, for us, before we give up." Her eyes were fierce. "I walked away once because I was scared. I'm not doing that again. But I need you to promise you won't either." "I promise." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of those promises settle. Victoria reached across the table, palm up. Jake hesitated, then placed his hand in hers. Her skin was soft, her grip firm. "So we're doing this? Really trying?" "Yeah, we're trying." Lily chose that moment to wander into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She stopped when she saw them holding hands across the table. "Are you guys dating?" Jake and Victoria looked at each other. Victoria's expression asked the question. Jake nodded. "Yeah, princess, we're dating." Lily's face split into a grin.
Finally! I thought you'd never figure it out.
"You knew?"
Dad, everyone knows when grown-ups like each other. You get all weird and smiley. Lily climbed into Victoria's lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. Does this mean Miss Tori can come to dinner all the time? Victoria's arms came around Lily automatically, her eyes bright with tears. If that's okay with you. It's super okay. Now I have a dad and a Miss Tori. Jake watched his daughter cuddle into Victoria's embrace, watched Victoria's face transform with wonder and tenderness, and felt something that had been clenched tight in his chest finally relax. They made pancakes together, Lily directing operations from her perch on the counter, Victoria and Jake bumping into each other in the small kitchen, laughing when the first batch burned. It was chaotic and imperfect, and exactly right. After breakfast, Lily insisted they go to the Phoenix Zoo. Victoria drove them in her Lexus, and Jake tried not to feel weird about the luxury car seats and the premium sound system. Lily chattered from the back seat about which animals she wanted to see first. At the zoo, they fell into an easy rhythm. Victoria bought the tickets before Jake could argue, but he paid for lunch and ice cream. They took turns pushing Lily on the carousel and taking photos in front of the elephant exhibit. When Lily got tired, she held both their hands, swinging between them as they walked. People stared sometimes. Jake's work-roughened hands and faded jeans next to Victoria's designer sunglasses and expensive watch made the class difference obvious. But Victoria didn't seem to notice or care, too busy helping Lily find the best viewing spot for the giraffes. Around 3 p.m., Lily announced she was hungry again. They found a shaded picnic table and ate overpriced zoo hot dogs while Lily explained in great detail the life cycle of butterflies. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and silenced it. "You can answer if it's important." "It's my father. He can wait." The phone buzzed again. And again. Victoria sighed and checked the messages. Her face went pale. "What's wrong?" "He's here. At the zoo. He wants to talk to both of us." "How does he know we're here?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "He probably has someone watching me. He does that sometimes when he thinks I'm making decisions he doesn't approve of." Lily looked between them, picking up on the tension. "Is something bad happening?" "No, princess. Just some grown-up stuff." Jake's mind raced. "Where does he want to meet?" Victoria checked her phone again. "The main plaza, near the flamingos." "Okay, let's go." They found Richard Hayward standing by the flamingo exhibit, conspicuously out of place in a tailored suit. He spotted them approaching and straightened, his expression unreadable. Lily grabbed Jake's hand. "Who's that man?" "That's Miss Tori's father." Richard's gaze landed on Lily, and something shifted in his face. Softened, almost. He crouched down to her level, moving with surprising gentleness for a man who'd tried to buy off Jake a week ago. "Hello, Lily. I'm Richard. It's very nice to meet you." Lily studied him with the serious consideration of an 8-year-old. "You're Miss Tori's dad?" "I am." "She's nice. She reads really good stories." "I know.
She gets that from her mother. Richard stood, his eyes meeting Jake's. I apologize for the intrusion, but I needed to see something for myself.
See what?
Whether you were serious,
Whether Victoria was serious. Whether this was a fleeting impulse or something real.
Richard looked at his daughter.
I see now that it's real. Victoria's voice was cold. You had someone follow me. I had someone keep me informed. There's a difference. No, Dad, there isn't. This is exactly the kind of controlling behavior that I know. Richard held up his hand. I know. And I'm here to apologize. Not just for today, but for 12 years ago. For taking choices away from you. For letting fear and pride dictate my decisions. The plaza was busy with families, kids running past with balloons and cotton candy. But around their small group, everything felt suspended. Why now? Victoria's arms were crossed, defensive. Why apologize now, after all this time? Because your mother was right. Because I've watched you be miserable for a decade, and I told myself it was worth it, that you were successful, that was what mattered. But seeing you with Coleman and his daughter, seeing you actually happy? Richard's voice roughened. I was wrong. About everything. Jake spoke up. You threatened my family. Told Victoria you'd destroy us if she didn't leave. I did. And I would have followed through if she'd called my bluff. I'm not apologizing for who I was. I'm telling you I'm trying to be better than that now. Lily tugged on Victoria's hand. Why is everyone sad? This is the zoo. The zoo is supposed to be fun. The innocent observation broke the tension. Victoria laughed, watery but genuine. She picked up Lily and settled her on her hip. You're right. The zoo should be fun. What do you want to see next? The monkeys. And then, can we get one of those big pretzels? Victoria looked at Jake, asking permission. He nodded. Let's go see the monkeys. Richard watched them start to walk away, then called out. Victoria! She turned back. I meant what I said in my office to Coleman. If he hurts you, I'll destroy him. But if he makes you happy, if he's good to you and that little girl, Richard paused. Then he has my support. All of it. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Dad. They spent another hour at the zoo, Richard trailing behind them at a respectful distance. He bought Lily a stuffed monkey from the gift shop and didn't protest when she hugged him with sticky fingers. He walked with them to the parking lot, his expensive shoes getting dusty on the path. At the cars, Richard pulled Jake aside while Victoria buckled Lily into the Lexus. I misjudged you, Coleman. I thought you were after her money. I was wrong. I don't need to be told twice that I'm not a gold digger. No, you don't. But you need to understand what dating Victoria means. The media attention, the business pressures, the people who'll try to use your relationship for leverage. Richard's voice dropped. And you need to know that I'm stepping back. Victoria's selling majority control of the company to David Chen. She'll keep 40% ownership and sit on the board, but she won't be CEO anymore. She told me. Did she tell you she's using the proceeds to start a literacy foundation? That she's planning to open library centers in underserved communities across Arizona? Pride swelled in Jake's chest. That sounds like her. It sounds like the daughter I should have encouraged 12 years ago instead of crushing. Richard extended his hand. Take care of her, and take care of that little girl. She looks like Grace might have looked. The observation hit Jake square in the chest. He shook Richard's hand, the old man's grip firm and steady. Driving home in Victoria's Lexus, Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Jake reached over and laced his fingers through Victoria's where it rested on the center console. Your father's trying. I know. I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive him yet, but I see he's trying.
Lily liked him. Lily likes everyone.
Victoria glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping child. She's special, Jake. Patient and kind and wise beyond her years. You've done an incredible job with her. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's called being a parent. You show up anyway. They pulled into Jake's driveway as the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jake carried Lily inside, settling her on the couch with a blanket. She stirred briefly, mumbling something about monkeys, then fell back asleep. Victoria stood in the living room, looking uncertain. Should I go? Stay, for dinner. Just something simple. They made grilled cheese and tomato soup, moving around each other in the kitchen with increasing ease. Victoria set the table while Jake cooked. They ate standing at the counter, talking in low voices so they wouldn't wake Lily. I have a board meeting Monday
To officially announce my transition out of the CEO role. Nervous? Terrified. But also relieved. David's been my partner for 6 years. Victoria set down her soup spoon. Jake, I need to tell you something. His stomach tightened. Okay? I'm scared too, of messing this up, of you realizing I'm not worth the complications I bring, of Lily getting attached and then me failing somehow. Her voice shook. But I'm more scared of not trying. I spent 12 years running from pain, from connection, from anything that might hurt. I'm done running. Jake crossed to where she stood, cupping her face in his hands. Her skin was soft, her eyes vulnerable. We're both scared. That's okay. We'll be scared together. He kissed her, gentle and careful, tasting salt from the tears on her cheeks. Victoria's hands came up to grip his shirt, holding on like he might disappear. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I love you. I never stopped. I love you too. Even when I hated you for leaving, I loved you. They stood in his small kitchen, holding each other while the soup got cold and Lily slept on the couch, and the future stretched out before them. Uncertain, but possible. For the first time in 12 years, possible felt like enough. 3 months passed in a rhythm Jake hadn't experienced since Sarah died. Weekday mornings meant dropping Lily at school, working the construction site until 4, picking her up and heading home for homework and dinner. But now Tuesday afternoons included Victoria reading at the library, and most evenings she'd show up around 6 with groceries or takeout, fitting herself into their life like a puzzle piece that had been missing. The town talked. Jake heard it from Tommy at work, saw it in the way some parents at school pickup gave him sideways glances. The single dad electrician dating the billionaire CEO made for good gossip. Most people were curious, some disapproving, a few genuinely happy for him. Jake stopped caring what strangers thought around the 3rd week, when Lily started calling Victoria Tori without the miss, and asking if she could come to parent night at school. February brought cooler weather and the announcement of Victoria's transition. The Phoenix Business Journal ran a profile piece. Victoria Hayward steps down as CEO, launches education initiative. The article praised her vision for the Grace Literacy Foundation, named for her late grandmother, dedicated to building library centers in underserved communities. Only Jake and Richard knew the truth behind the name. Victoria moved out of her Paradise Valley estate into a 4-bedroom house in Gilbert, 15 minutes from Jake's place in Mesa. The new house was nice, but normal. The kind of place where neighbors borrowed lawnmowers and kids rode bikes in the street. She kept some of her wealth, selling off the designer clothes and expensive art, keeping the practical SUV, but donating the luxury sedan. I don't need all of it, she'd explained to Jake one evening while helping Lily with a school project. 40% ownership in the company still generates more passive income than I'll ever spend. The rest was just wait. Jake watched her hot glue popsicle sticks onto cardboard, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration, and felt his world shift further off its axis in the best way. In March, Victoria asked Jake and Lily to join her for Sunday dinner at Richard's estate in Paradise Valley. Lily bounced with excitement at seeing the castle again. Jake felt like he was walking into a trap, but Victoria's hand in his steadied his nerves. Richard had changed in subtle ways. He smiled more, listened better, and made an effort to connect with Lily that seemed genuine rather than calculated. Over pot roast that his chef Martin had prepared, Richard asked Lily about school and soccer and her favorite books. He pulled out an old photo album and showed her pictures of Victoria as a child. Your Tori used to read all the time, too. Drove me crazy, always had her nose in a book instead of learning the business. Victoria rolled her eyes. You mean instead of becoming you? I mean instead of wasting her intelligence on fairy tales. But Richard's tone was fond, not critical. Turns out those fairy tales prepared her for something more important than quarterly earnings. After dinner, Richard asked to speak with Jake privately. They went to the study, the same room where Richard had tried to buy him off months ago. Jake's shoulders tensed automatically. Richard poured 2 glasses of bourbon without asking, handed one to Jake. I've been thinking about Grace, about the granddaughter I never got to meet. Jake took the bourbon but didn't drink. Okay. Victoria showed me the ultrasound photos. Did you know she kept them? For 12 years, hidden in a box, too painful to look at but too precious to throw away. Richard's voice was rough. She was going to name the baby Grace Elena Coleman. Grace after my mother, Elena after herself. The information hit Jake like a physical blow. He'd never asked about names, about the details. It had seemed too painful to excavate. I failed that little girl before she even had a chance at life. I failed my daughter. I failed my wife, who spent her last year alive trying to fix what I'd broken. Richard finally looked at Jake directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to not fail Lily. What does that mean? It means I'd like to be in her life. As her grandfather, if you'll allow it. I can't undo the past, but I can try to get the future right. Jake studied the old man's face, looking for manipulation or hidden agendas. He found only grief and hope mixed together. Victoria and I would need to talk about it, and Lily gets final say. If she's uncomfortable, it doesn't happen. Fair enough. They rejoined the others to find Victoria and Lily in the library, reading together on an enormous leather couch. Lily was curled into Victoria's side, completely relaxed, completely trusting. The sight made Jake's chest ache with a longing he hadn't known he still carried. A family. Not the one he'd planned with Sarah, but a family nonetheless. April brought the first real test of their relationship rules. Victoria had been working on securing funding for the first Grace Literacy Foundation Center, targeting a low-income neighborhood in South Phoenix. The budget came in at $500,000 for the building renovation, books, and first year of operations. She mentioned it casually over dinner at Jake's house, discussing it the way someone might talk about remodeling a bathroom. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but said nothing until after Lily went to bed. $500,000, just like that. Victoria looked up from her laptop where she'd been reviewing architectural plans. It's a reasonable budget for the project scope. I've seen the neighborhood. These kids deserve a safe place to read and learn. I'm not arguing the cause. I'm saying you just committed $500,000 of your personal money without blinking. It's my foundation, my money. What's the problem? The problem is, I make $54,000 a year. To me, $500,000 is an incomprehensible amount. To you, it's Tuesday. Jake paced his small living room. How am I supposed to be your equal partner when we exist on completely different financial planets? Victoria closed her laptop, her expression shifting to understanding. You're right. I should have realized how that would sound. But Jake, this is exactly why I needed to step away from the CEO role. That money doesn't feel real to me anymore. It's just numbers in accounts I barely look at. It's real to the people who don't have it. I know, you're right. She stood, moving toward him. What do you need from me? How do we make this work? Jake stopped pacing. I need you to remember that for most people, money isn't abstract. It's rent and groceries and whether you can afford new shoes for your kid. I need you to not make me feel small every time you casually mention amounts I'll never see in my lifetime. I never want you to feel small. Ever. Victoria's eyes were fierce. You're the bravest, strongest, most principled man I know. You tore up my father's check without hesitation. You build things with your hands that people will use for decades. You raised an incredible daughter on your own. None of that is small. Then why does it feel like I'm constantly being reminded of what I can't provide? The question hung between them, raw and honest. Victoria took his hands. Because we haven't figured out how to talk about money yet. Because I'm still learning how to live like a normal person after spending 12 years in a gilded cage. Because this is hard and new, and we're going to mess up sometimes. I don't want Lily growing up thinking money solves everything. Neither do I. So we teach her together. We show her that working hard and being kind matters more than having a big bank account. Victoria squeezed his hands. Jake, I chose this life. I chose you and Lily and Sunday morning pancakes and a normal house in Gilbert. Not because I'm slumming or playing pretend, but because this is what makes me happy. The money is just a tool. It doesn't define me anymore. Doesn't it, though? You're building a foundation. You can write a check for $500,000 without worrying. That's still who you are. No, who I am is the woman who reads to kids every Tuesday, who learned to make pancakes from scratch because you said box mix wasn't the same, who sits with Lily doing homework and actually has to Google long division because I forgot how it works. Victoria's voice cracked. The money is what I have, but you and Lily are who I am now. Jake pulled her into his arms, feeling her shake against him. They stood like that for a long moment, working through the friction that would probably always exist between their different worlds. We'll figure it out, he murmured into her hair. Together. Together. May arrived with Lily's 9th birthday and a question that had been building for weeks. Victoria sat on Jake's back porch after the birthday party, watching Lily play with her new soccer ball in the yard. I want to ask Lily if she'd be comfortable with me being more than just Tori. Jake's beer stopped halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? I mean, I want to know if she'd be okay with me being a parental figure. Not replacing Sarah, never that, but being someone she can count on. Someone who's committed to being in her life permanently. You're already that. But we've never named it. We've never asked her what she wants. And Jake, I need to know if I can start thinking about a future that includes both of you. Really includes you. Because if I'm going to do this, I need to know it's not temporary.
Jake set his beer down carefully. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you can see a future where we're actually a family, where this isn't just dating, but building something permanent. His heart hammered against his ribs. I can see it. I've been seeing it for weeks now. But Victoria, marriage is... I'm not proposing. Not yet. Not until we're both sure. Until Lily's sure. Until we've worked through more of the hard stuff. Victoria turned to face him fully. But I need to know if it's possible. If you can imagine trusting me that much after everything. Jake looked at Lily, laughing as she kicked the ball against the fence, her joy uncomplicated and pure. He thought about the past 5 months, about Victoria showing up consistently, learning to cook and clean and be present in ways that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with love. Yeah, I can imagine it. Victoria's smile was brighter than the Arizona sun. Then let's talk to her. Together. They called Lily over, settling on the porch steps with her between them. She looked between their serious faces with curiosity, but no fear. Lily, we wanted to ask you something important, Jake started. Are you getting married? Victoria laughed, surprised. Not yet, but we wanted to know how you feel about Tori being around more, about her being part of our family officially. Lily was quiet for a moment, considering. Would she move in? Eventually, maybe, if everyone was comfortable with that. Would she still read to me before bed? Every night I could. And you'd both come to my soccer games? Every single one. Lily turned to Victoria with the seriousness that sometimes made her seem much older than 9. If you're my family, does that mean you won't leave? Even if you and Dad fight sometimes? The question pierced straight through to Victoria's deepest fear. Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. I will never leave you. Not ever. Even if your dad and I have problems, I would still be here for you. That's a promise. Okay then. I want you to be my family. My real family, not just Dad's girlfriend. Victoria pulled Lily into a fierce hug, tears spilling over. Jake wrapped his arms around both of them, feeling the pieces of his fractured heart finally knit back together. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Jake and Victoria sat on the couch discussing logistics, how they'd transition to living together, what that might look like, when they'd take that step. I don't want to rush, Jake said. Lily's doing great, but big changes can be hard on kids. Agreed. What if we do a trial? I stay over a few nights a week, see how it feels? You mean actually stay? Not just dinner and leaving at 10? Victoria's cheeks flushed. Yes, actually stay. In your room. With you. If you want that. They've been careful about physical intimacy, both aware of Lily in the house and the weight of their history. Stolen kisses in the kitchen, held hands during movies, but nothing more. The thought of Victoria in his bed, of waking up next to her, made Jake's pulse kick up. I want that. She leaned in and kissed him, deeper than usual, her hands sliding into his hair. Jake pulled her closer, tasting her sigh, feeling 12 years of wanting crash over him. They broke apart, breathing hard. Not tonight, Victoria whispered. But soon. Soon. June brought heat and the soft launch of the Grace Literacy Foundation's first center. The renovated building in South Phoenix opened on a Saturday with a ribbon-cutting ceremony that drew local news coverage. Richard attended, standing beside Victoria with obvious pride. Lily cut the ribbon with oversized scissors, grinning for the cameras. Jake stood back, watching Victoria in her element. She gave a short speech about the importance of accessible education, about giving kids a safe place to discover the magic of reading. She was poised and articulate, every inch the CEO she used to be, but her passion was real.
This mattered to her in a way corporate profits never had. After the ceremony, kids poured into the new space, marveling at the colorful murals and fresh books. Victoria sat on the floor with a circle of children, reading the first story in the new center. Jake found Richard standing beside him, both watching. "She's happy," Richard observed. "Happier than I've ever seen her." "Yeah, she is. You did that. You and your daughter." "She did it herself. We just gave her a reason." Richard nodded slowly. "Coleman, I'm dying." The words were so casual, Jake almost missed them. Then they registered, and he turned sharply. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I found out last month." Richard's face showed no emotion. 6 months, maybe less. I'm telling you because Victoria will need support when I'm gone. She'll pretend she's fine, but she's not good at losing people she loves, even when the relationship was complicated. Jake's mind reeled. Does she know? I'm telling her tonight. I wanted you to hear it from me first, so you'd know how to help her. Richard finally looked at him. I'm asking you to take care of her. To be the family I couldn't give her. To make sure she doesn't retreat into work or isolation when the grief hits. I'll take care of her. But Richard, you should know. She loves you. Despite everything, she loves you. I know. That's what makes this harder. Richard turned back to watch his daughter. I failed her when she needed me most. At least at the end, I get to see her truly happy. That's more than I deserve. That evening, Victoria came to Jake's house, pale and shaking. Lily was at a sleepover, so they were alone when Victoria collapsed into his arms, sobbing. 6 months. Maybe less. He waited a month to tell me because he didn't want to disrupt my foundation launch. Jake held her on the couch, stroking her hair, letting her cry out the fear and anger and grief. When she finally calmed, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. I wasted so much time being angry at him. Now I have 6 months to what? Forgive him? Say goodbye? Figure out how to lose another parent? You do whatever feels right. There's no script for this. I don't know what feels right. I just know I'm terrified. Jake cupped her face, making her look at him. You're not alone this time. When your mom died, you dealt with it alone while running a company. This time, you have me. You have Lily. You have people who love you and will hold you up when you can't stand. Promise? Promise. July meant spending weekends at Richard's estate, helping him sort through a lifetime of possessions and memories. Richard moved slowly now, the cancer eating away at his strength, but his mind stayed sharp. He told stories Victoria had never heard, about her mother, about building the company, about regrets that came too late to fix. Lily accompanied them sometimes, and Richard delighted in teaching her card games and showing her old photos. He'd created a trust fund for her education, enough to pay for any college she wanted. Jake had initially protested, but Victoria reminded him, he's her grandfather. Let him do this. August brought Richard's admission to hospice care at home. Victoria split her time between the foundation, Jake's house, and her father's bedside. Jake watched her hold it together during the day and fall apart at night, and loved her more for her strength and her vulnerability in equal measure. On a Tuesday evening in late August, Richard asked to see Jake alone. The old man looked diminished in his hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, skin papery and gray. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay? Are you going to marry my daughter?
Jake didn't hesitate. Yes, when she's ready. When we've gotten through this and she's had time to grieve. Good. Because I need to know she'll be taken care of. That she'll have someone who puts her first, who loves her for who she is, and not what she can provide. Richard's breathing was labored. I'm leaving her the house, the estate. I know she doesn't want it, but I'm asking you to convince her to keep it. Not to live in, but to use. For the foundation, for events, for something meaningful. I'll talk to her. In the safe in my office, there's a box, blue velvet. It was my mother's engagement ring, the one I tried to give you for Victoria before. I'm giving it to you now, no conditions. Just a grandfather hoping to see his granddaughter as flower girl at a wedding he won't live to attend. Jake's throat closed. Richard, don't make this harder. The old man's eyes were wet. Just promise me you'll make her happy. That's all I need to die peacefully. I promise. Richard Hayward died 3 days later, on a Friday morning, with Victoria holding his hand. She called Jake at the construction site, her voice hollow, and he left immediately, not caring about the job or the deadline or anything except getting to her. He found her in Richard's study, sitting in the leather chair, staring at nothing. She looked up when he entered, her face completely blank. He's gone. Jake pulled her up and into his arms. She didn't cry, didn't shake, just stood there like a statue. The grief would come later, he knew. Right now, she was in shock. The funeral was massive, hundreds of people from Phoenix's business and social elite. Victoria delivered a eulogy that was honest about Richard's flaws and generous about his attempts at redemption. She talked about losing her mother, losing Grace, and how her father had tried, in the end, to make amends. Jake stood in the front row with Lily, watching Victoria hold herself together through sheer force of will. When the service ended, she was swarmed by mourners offering condolences. She smiled and thanked them and played the gracious daughter, while Jake could see the cracks forming beneath the surface. That night, at Jake's house, with Lily asleep down the hall, Victoria finally broke. She curled into Jake on the couch and sobbed for everything she'd lost. Her mother, her father, Grace, 12 years with Jake, the family she might have had if fear hadn't controlled so many decisions. Jake held her through all of it, whispering that she was safe, that he had her, that she wasn't alone. When the storm passed, Victoria pulled back, her face blotchy and swollen. I can't keep doing this. Jake's heart stopped. Doing what? Pretending I'm fine. Splitting my time between 3 different houses, acting like we're just dating when I want so much more. She took a shaking breath. Jake, I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to be Lily's mom, officially. I want to build a life that isn't split between what I have and what I want. Victoria, I know it's too soon. I know I'm a mess right now with grief, but I also know that life is short and people die, and I don't want to waste any more time being careful and practical when I could be happy. Jake stood, pulling her up with him. Wait here. He went to his bedroom, to the drawer where he'd hidden the blue velvet box Richard had given him 2 weeks ago. When he returned to the living room, Victoria was standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself. Jake dropped to one knee. Her breath caught, hands flying to her mouth. Victoria Elena Hayward,
I loved you when we were kids who didn't know any better. I loved you when I hated you for leaving. I loved you when I married someone else and tried to move on. And I love you now, standing here in my living room, asking for forever." He opened the box, revealing the vintage diamond ring. "Your father gave me this 2 weeks before he died. Said it was his mother's. Said he wanted to see you happy before the end. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Lily's mom and my partner in every way that matters?" Victoria dropped to her knees in front of him, tears streaming down her face.
Yes. God, yes. 1,000 times, yes.
He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. Then he pulled her into a kiss that tasted like salt and promises and coming home after being lost for too long. They were married 6 weeks later in late October at the Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix. Small ceremony, 60 guests. Lily is both flower girl and ring bearer because she insisted on doing both jobs. Richard's chair sat empty in the front row, a framed photo of him smiling resting on the seat. Victoria wore a simple white dress and desert wildflowers in her hair. Jake wore his best suit and couldn't stop smiling. When the officiant asked if they had vows, they'd agreed to keep them short. Jake went first. "Victoria, you taught me that second chances are possible, that love is worth fighting for, even when it's hard, that being brave enough to be vulnerable is the greatest strength. I promise to love you, respect you, and be your equal partner every day for the rest of our lives." Victoria's voice shook but held.
Jake, you taught me that home isn't a place, it's people. That real wealth is measured in love, not bank accounts. That being enough means being yourself. I promise to love you, honor you, and build our life together. Always.
They exchanged rings. Jake's had an inscription inside. Second chances. Victoria's read, "Finally home." When the officiant pronounced them married, Lily cheered louder than anyone. The kiss was deep and sweet and full of promise. At the reception in the Botanical Gardens Pavilion, they'd chosen a simple BBQ instead of formal dinner. Jake's construction crew drank beer with Victoria's foundation board members. Frank Morrison gave a toast about how love doesn't care about tax brackets. Carol from the library cried happy tears. During the father-daughter dance, Victoria had asked Jake to dance with her to honor her father's memory. They swayed to butterfly kisses, while photos of Richard with young Victoria played on a screen behind them.
He would have loved this,
Victoria whispered.
Simple and real and full of people who actually matter.
He did love it. He told me so before he died. Later, Jake danced with Lily, who wore a pink dress and a flower crown.
Dad, does this mean Tori's my mom now?
If you want her to be.
I do, but I still remember my first mom. Is that okay?
Jake's eyes stung. That's more than okay, Princess. You can love both of them. Love isn't a limited resource. The evening ended with sparklers and laughter and Victoria in Jake's arms, dancing under the desert stars. They'd honeymooned later. Right now, they just wanted to go home together, to the house in Gilbert that Victoria owned, but that they'd made theirs, where Lily's soccer trophies sat on the mantel next to Victoria's Stanford degree, where the refrigerator was covered in finger-painted art and grocery lists. They pulled up to the house near midnight, Lily asleep in the back seat. Jake carried his daughter inside while Victoria unlocked the door. Together, they tucked Lily into bed, kissing her forehead in tandem. In their bedroom, Victoria sat on the bed they now shared, looking at the ring on her finger.
We did it. We actually did it.
Jake sat beside her, taking her hand. Yeah, we did.
I spent 12 years thinking I'd destroyed the best thing in my life, thinking I didn't deserve a second chance at happiness.
She leaned her head on his shoulder.
Thank you for proving me wrong.
Thank you for coming back, for fighting for this, for being brave enough to choose love over fear.
They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the enormity of the day. Jake?
Yeah?
I'm happy. Completely, overwhelmingly happy. And it terrifies me.
Good. That means it's real. The best things in life are the ones that scare us a little. He kissed the top of her head. We've got forever to get used to this. Some love stories start with a kiss. Theirs started with goodbye. But the best love stories are the ones that refuse to end, no matter how many times life tries to write the final page. Outside, the Arizona night wrapped around their home, stars scattered across the sky like promises. Inside, three people who'd found each other through loss and grief and impossible odds slept peacefully. A family, imperfect and real and finally whole.